He was rich and alone, and that was the problem. When the mother of his 10-year-old daughter died, tech entrepreneur Evan Pierce found himself face to face not with a tax return or a venture round, but with the Florida Department of Children and Families and the child's aunt, both convinced that money did not replace presence. Miami's wet summer pressed in, the air conditioner hummed in his Brickell condominium, and for the first time in years, he understood something simple. It was not about what he was worth, it was about how much time he would give. The stake was painfully personal, to remain a father not on paper, but in reality, and not to blow the second chance people rarely get. 2 years earlier, he had sold a real-time data processing startup, and after the deal numbers came, that he had previously seen only on other people's slides. He drove across the bridges of Biscayne Bay, cycling his electric car among meetings and workouts, and in that period he could buy anything: the best private schools, kids' coding classes, tickets to any show, but he could not buy the habit of listening. His marriage had already run dry. Conversations with his ex-wife had turned into protocols instead of life, and when she got sick and left quickly, the emptiness stopped being temporary. He asked himself what would happen if he failed, and realized there would be no third attempt. The Florida Department of Children and Families stepped into the story without emotion, as a system should. They came on a report from the child's maternal aunt, Cynthia Howard, and recorded the facts. Father worked, father was absent, father compensated with gifts. Cynthia was not a villain. She simply believed that stability is routine and slow, daily small things, not signed contracts and payment confirmations. At first, Evan thought that an expense report and a nanny schedule would be enough, but he quickly learned they wanted something else, that he get up in the morning and make breakfast, and in the evening check homework, and at any moment know where the pink scooter stood by the door and what the school speech therapist's name was. On the day the first letter arrived from the Miami-Dade County Family Court, he woke before his alarm and listened to the air conditioner rattle the air, to Brickell's constant noise, and he noticed that in the entryway, next to expensive sneakers, lay a nearly new baseball glove that still smelled of leather, and leaning beside it was a pink scooter with a cartoon sticker. He understood how it looked from the outside. Expensive things were present, habits were not, gifts were in place, but conversations were scarce. That morning he set himself a simple goal: get Mia ready for the day without reaching for the phone, without checking email, without replacing words with an order confirmation. Circumstances were against him. The girl spoke in short phrases, looked past him, and stood in the kitchen doorway as if it were someone else's territory while he stumbled over his own awkwardness. "Do you want toast?" he said, and then, not waiting, added, "I can order anything." "Don't," she said. "I can do it myself." He felt guilt because he had grown used to hearing that automatic myself. He asked himself, can past years be closed with one good breakfast? He put a pan on, found the bread, warmed it, sliced a banana, poured milk, and in those 10 minutes of silent hurry, he recognized something simple. Silence here was not an enemy, it was a new language. His mini-conclusion did not need high words. He had to stop promising and start doing, and do it today, not after the next call. In the afternoon came the first home visit from the Florida Department of Children and Families, and his concrete goal turned technical: demonstrate safety and basic readiness, because the checklist was simple and strict. First aid kit, smoke detector, schedule, pediatrician contacts, food in the fridge, school items. The obstacles were not in spreadsheets, but in missing small things: a child's chair, a craft kit, bins for extra shoes. The inspector, a tall woman in a linen shirt, asked calmly, "Where does Mia keep her school supplies?" "She has a backpack," he said too confidently. "I see the backpack," she said. "Where does she do homework?" He glanced around his perfectly clean marble kitchen with hidden wiring and, for the first time, felt shame because of the spotless surface. There were no places for ink, no traces of glue, no marker stains. "I'll organize that today," he said, and heard fear dry his voice. A heavy thought formed. He had built the infrastructure of money, but not the infrastructure of childhood. At the end of the visit, when the inspector noted that the apartment was clean and safe but lacking in routine, he drew a mini-conclusion. His task was to turn a sterile apartment into a living space with habits and traces of life, not into a showroom. He drove to Publix, and his goal was domestic and clear. Buy a week's groceries the way ordinary parents did, not the way busy people did with one tap and a delivery window. The obstacle proved psychological. He did not know the subtleties of his daughter's tastes, and had learned to choose by price and brand status rather than by a child's habits. "What yogurt do you like?" he asked Mia, who was rolling the cart beside him. "Normal," she said, and he realized normal was their current language of communication, risk-free, non-committal. "Let's take 3 flavors," he said, and after a pause added, "You pick." She took strawberry and peach, and he caught himself scanning price tags and feeling the accustomed impulse to grab the most expensive because that was how he was used to proving care. "Okay," he said mostly to himself, "we're taking the one you'll actually eat." At the register he bought not only groceries but also a glue stick, colored cardstock, blunt-tip scissors, an inexpensive lunchbox, and a pack of hair ties, and he felt an odd relief. These items were concrete and matched his new task. The mini-conclusion was visible on the receipt. The list had stopped being a pile of premium goods and had become a set of habits. 2 days later, he did what he had promised the inspector and took Mia to a waterside park with a baseball glove and a cooler with ice in the trunk, because it was hot, and he wanted to show that he could think ahead, that he could prepare for heat and thirst. The concrete goal: spend an hour not around a screen but side by side on the grass, throw the ball, give her his clumsy laugh, catch her short comments. The obstacle was the sky. A typical Miami summer storm rolled in out of nowhere. A gray sheet closed the bay, and they had to hide under a shelter, where they ran into Cynthia, slim, put together, in a cotton dress, who said right away, "You started too late." "I started," he said, hearing a note of defense in his voice as if he were on a pitch. "This is a child, Evan," she said more gently. "You do not win this with presentations." He exhaled and thought, could he negotiate with himself to stop proving and start listening? "Give me time," he said, "and look at the specifics." He opened the cooler and showed water, apples, napkins, and it looked ridiculous as an argument, but that was what he had, small proofs. Cynthia nodded but said she would file for temporary custody, and he felt fear that no number could cover. The mini-conclusion was cool and precise. He would not earn agreement with words. Week by week had to assemble into a new story. He began building that story. He printed a simple schedule and pinned it to the fridge with a magnet. Wake up, breakfast, school, homework, dinner, reading, lights out. The goal: fill the blank squares, not with promises, but with check marks. The obstacles: his job, messages, his habit of answering emails before he finished a bedtime chapter. In the first week, he caught himself in an automatic gesture. The phone vibrated on the table, and his hand moved. "It can wait," he said aloud, and read out loud to the end a chapter about a girl and a spaceship, even though Mia listened, as usual, silently and reservedly. After lights out, he went to the kitchen and spread on the pristine table the cardstock, glue, and scissors he had bought at Publix, because he knew a school project about the bridges of Biscayne Bay was due in a couple of days, and they would make it together even if she resisted. He caught himself with a strange question. Was this the kind of work you are not paid for, yet it is expensive? The mini-conclusion was almost calm. Routine was his new investment strategy, and it would pay back with quiet days. The Florida Department of Children and Families scheduled another meeting, this time with his attorney and the case supervisor, to discuss interim terms. His goal: show a plan and facts. The obstacle, interlocutors who had heard too many promises from too many parents. "What has changed in 2 weeks?" the supervisor asked. "I am living by the schedule," he said. "I canceled 2 business trips. I took her to the pediatrician. The dentist is already booked. We have neighbors' contacts. Their numbers are written on paper by the door. I attend school meetings, and I am helping with the Bridges project." "Do you have proof?" the attorney asked, defaulting to his profession. "I do," Evan said, putting on the table a receipt from Publix, the printed schedule, the doctor's cards, the list of contact people, and photos of the project materials laid out. He had stripped the pitch tone out of his voice in advance because he understood he was not a startup here. Inside, he felt irritation at having to prove the obvious, but for the first time, he chose a different approach. Stop resisting the procedure and start using it. Mini conclusion: the system is not an enemy if you work at its rhythm and in its language. One evening they came home late, and at the front desk of the Brickell condominium, the concierge looked up and said, "Mr. Pierce, a courier left a box of school supplies for you." "Thank you," he said, and glanced around the lobby, feeling how out of place a box of glue and cardstock looked against glass and steel. "Have a good evening." Mia walked beside him in silence, hugging the pink scooter helmet, and he stayed quiet too because he did not want to disturb the fragile calm. In the apartment he offered, "Let's start the bridge tonight, at least lay it out." "Tomorrow," she said, and he recognized that he should not push. He warmed milk for her, slid over a plate of sliced mango and said, "Okay, tomorrow." He noticed he now said tomorrow more often, not as a delay, but as a plan. In that quiet by the door where the scooter stood, another thought came. He was learning patience, and this role was harder than his previous profession. Mini conclusion: he had stopped fighting pauses and started respecting them. That night Mia spiked a fever. His goal turned urgent and strangely simple. Be present, do not panic, follow instructions. The obstacle: no habit of handling children's sicknesses. He was the father who used to arrive with a gift after recovery, and the guilt clicked hard now. He remembered where the first aid kit was, took her temperature, called the pediatrician's 24-hour line, and wrote down the recommendations, set water and a cool washcloth, and stayed on a chair by the bed. "Are you here?" she asked, half asleep. "Here," he said, and that word became the most important one of the day. He watched his phone blinking on the nightstand, and for the first time did not reach. He was afraid, but not like before, when he feared losing a deal, afraid of something else now, that he could lose trust if he left even for a few minutes. By morning, the fever broke. He made toast on a dry skillet and poured tea, and he felt relief unlike any work victory. Mini conclusion: real presence is time exchanged for worry, and it cannot be bought with any card. 2 days later, he ran into Cynthia at the concierge desk. She came to pick up Mia's childhood photo album that was still at his place. The goal: do not raise his voice and do not justify, speak honestly. The obstacle: their past reactions. "I am not against you," Cynthia said without prelude. "I am for her. I see you're trying, but do you understand that a month is not enough?" "I do," he said, "and I know I am late. I am ashamed of how I was, but I am staying." "Words," she said, though gentler than before. "Facts," he said, and simply listed, "I was with her at night when she had a fever. I canceled trips. I am making bridges and breakfasts with her. I know who her teacher is and who the neighbor is, the one who can pick her up from after school if I get stuck. I am teaching her to tie her sneaker laces, and we practice a countdown so she can get ready on time. These are small things, but they add up." She was quiet and nodded. Mini conclusion: he saw that Cynthia's rigid stance cracked not from emotion, but from specifics. Before court, his attorney insisted on rehearsal. His goal: speak not impressively, but honestly. The obstacle: the habit of impressive delivery. "No metaphors," the attorney said. "The judge hears 10 of those a day. He needs simple facts and your readiness." "Understood," Evan said. He looked at his notes and crossed out everything that sounded like advertising, leaving short lines. Sunday breakfasts, Publix, contact list by the door, pediatrician, homework, life skills. He asked himself one last time, is it too late? The question stung, but did not paralyze anymore. Mini conclusion. He accepted authorship of the past and responsibility for the future without trying to rewrite memory. The Miami-Dade County courtroom was cool and formal. The air conditioner made the air dry like a data center, and that oddly calmed him. The judge reviewed the file, checked names, and passed the floor to him. Evan stood and spoke steadily, because a speech here meant a short list, not grand plans, but simple actions. "I am guilty of being an emotionally absent father," he said. "I replaced time with money because that is how I got used to solving problems. But here, I need a different language. In the past weeks, I have done simple things, and I am continuing to do them. We have a schedule on the wall at home, and I check boxes for breakfast and reading. On Sundays, I fry Cuban tostadas on a cast-iron skillet and make scrambled eggs, and we drink café con leche, and this is not a show, but a repeating thing. I am buying not expensive trinkets, but ordinary groceries at Publix, strawberry and peach yogurt, bread, fruit, a lunchbox, a glue stick, and cardstock for school projects. By the door, there is a list of phone numbers, our neighbor Maria, her teacher Mrs. Lee, the pediatrician Dr. Ramirez. On the fridge, there is a schedule with my work windows, so Mia knows when I am definitely off the phone. I canceled 2 business trips. I keep a cooler with ice and water in the trunk because Miami is hot, and if we go to the playground with the baseball glove, I prepare in advance. I booked a dentist and a vision check. I keep extra hair ties at home. I know where her pink scooter is, and I replaced its brake cable myself because I want to be able to do simple things with my hands. I am doing her school project with her, the bridges across Biscayne Bay, and I can list the materials: cardstock, glue, scissors, thread, wooden skewers. Our model will be on the kitchen table tonight. I know her daily schedule. I know who is on after school. I have a plan if I am delayed. Our neighbor will help, and Mia knows that. I am not trying to buy trust. I am trying to earn it. I understand that a few weeks are not enough and do not erase the past years. But I am staying, and I am changing. I accept the conditions of the Florida Department of Children and Families, and I am ready for any number of visits. I am afraid that I could fail again, but I have simple, repeatable actions, and I am responsible for them. He fell silent, and the silence was not a pause for drama, but the natural end of a list. Cynthia rose and spoke, careful and without aggression. She acknowledged that she saw change, but asked the court to create checkpoints. The judge nodded and asked questions: who picked up from school, what plans existed for summer, how home safety was arranged. Evan answered without ornament: I pick up. If an urgent meeting arises, our neighbor Maria. For summer, day camp at school. I already paid and provided contacts. Safety, smoke detectors, first aid kit, the concierge at the front desk who can call if needed. He felt anxiety turn into responsible focus. He stood inside his new life and spoke of it as facts. The mini-conclusion formed silently. His speech worked not because it was beautiful, but because it was true. The decision was not applause. The judge granted him custody on the condition of oversight by the Florida Department of Children and Families for the next 6 months, with a requirement of monthly reports on domestic routines and doctor visits, and with Cynthia's right to visit and intervene if there were red flags. It was a compromise document, poetry-free paper, but it gave him the main thing: time in the present. He nodded, thanked the court, and saw Mia look at him briefly and tiredly. And it was clear she did not care about the phrasing. She cared about breakfast, homework, and whether he would show up that evening. On Sunday he woke early and started the coffee maker. set a cast-iron skillet on the stove, and cut long slices of bread for Cuban tostadas, warmed milk in a small pot for café con leche, cracked eggs into a glass bowl, salted, and beat them with a fork, not thinking about style or perfection, but about repetition and calm. On the kitchen table lay the school project of card and skewers, Biscayne Bay's bridges in miniature, with glue showing at some joints, and that looked like proof that they had worked with their hands, with perfectionism switched off. Mia came in barefoot, took one toast, nodded without a word, and he took the nod as normal, not as a prize. They ate, sipping warm coffee with milk and little drinks of water, because the heat was already creeping into the city, and the air conditioner hummed imperturbably. By the door stood the pink scooter, the baseball glove hung nearby, and he let his eyes rest on these domestic anchors because they now formed their world. He said, "After breakfast, we'll finish the second span's railings." And Mia said, "Okay," simply and without a smile, but with a readiness he accepted without extra expectations. This did not erase the past, but it gave a concrete path forward. Money did not replace presence, and a second chance was built out of daily small things, out of tostadas on a cast-iron skillet, out of receipts from Publix with ordinary groceries, out of lists of phone numbers by the door, and out of cardboard bridges that stood not on beautiful words, but on patience and glue. He finally learned that love, in his case, was not the sum of transfers, but the sum of morning minutes and evening assignments, and he was ready to keep adding to that sum day after day.